And a big happy birthday for the 7 times world champion Lewis Hamilton. And on that, you can see his stats there. We'll get into that in a second, though, because on his birthday, I think planetf1.com has pretty much done quite an interesting story ranking his 10 best F1 victories so far. So we'll have a quick look at them and we'll get into it a bit. So number 10, spoiler alert if you want to watch it, 2007 United States Grand Prix, first to first they've got here. Can't disagree, that's definitely one of them. 2008 Monaco Grand Prix, third to first. That was not as simple as it looks. They've got number 8, 2018 German Grand Prix, 14th to first. That was a fantastic one. Vettel going out, if you remember, into the barriers. 7th, 2014 Bahrain, second to first. Once again, that does not tell the full story. We'll get into each one. Turkish Grand Prix, 6th to first. That was an absolutely fantastic one because Mercedes probably should not have won that. 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix, 4th to first, once again in that horrible 2009 McLaren, not a good McLaren. 2020 British Grand Prix, 1st to first, not bad. Okay, next up we've got the third, number 3, 2012 United States Grand Prix, 2nd to first. That was an epic fight between Lewis Hamilton and Vettel. And the number 2 is the 2021 Grand Prix, 10th to first. Yes, what a weekend. One of his, I think, his best race of all time. But they've put here 2008 British Grand Prix, 4th to first, and they put by a country mile. That's interesting. Are we going to agree with it? Let's scroll all the way back up and let's have a chat about it. Let's have a chat about it then. So, number 10 they've got here. When I eventually get there, sorry if I made any of you seasick. As we know, the 2007 United States Grand Prix happened in his first ever year. This was a race against Fernando Alonso, where Alonso was just as fast as Lewis Hamilton, where the previous Grand Prix in Canada, he'd won his first race, as it says here, his maiden win. He dominated that race, but this race, it was a bit closer. And this pretty much annoyed, it says here, I completely agree, Fernando Alonso, because he had the measure of an Alonso in Montreal, as the Spaniard made mistakes that took him out of contention. And Alonso showed up ready for a revenge, let's say. But Hamilton once again managed to pull out the better performance, it says. He took pole by under 0.2 of a second, so quite close, and he had to put up with race-long pressure from, it says here, an incandescent Alonso. Now, midway through was a straightforward head-to-head a la Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna at Spain, if you remember that, from 1991. Going into turn 1, Hamilton held his nerve. Shortly after, Alonso weaved towards the pit wall to show his frustration, and he hadn't signed for McLaren as a double world champion, he thinks, to be eclipsed by McLaren's homegrown talent in his first year. I think a lot of people believe that. Alonso joined McLaren thinking Hamilton will be number 2. He's a rookie. He thought he was going to win. He thought he was going to have it easy. I think a lot of people did, other than Lewis Hamilton. So he eclipsed Alonso on that occasion, coming home just 1.5 seconds clear of his teammate. And as we know, this situation here, as Planet F1 has said, it will eventually absolutely implode. Next up, we got the 2008 Monaco Grand Prix, 3rd to first. This wasn't as simple as it looks. So, yes, it says, absolutely, there was a bit of fortune for this one. Hamilton made an error early on that, funny enough, played into his hand. He hit the wall. I think finishing the second sector, coming into the third sector of the race. He qualified third behind the 2 Ferraris, and he got into second, catching Massa. He was fortunate to avoid any serious damage, having only had the third sector to negotiate. Massa was sprinting away at the front, opened up this 12-second gap, and the safety car came out, was deployed, and that really, really helped Hamilton because he made that error and he'd already changed tyres. Raikkonen running second ran out of contention. He was given a penalty for failing to have all his tyres fitted at the 3-minute mark before the race. Yes, another Ferrari error you might see. But an error from Massa before his pit stop handed the lead to Kubica, who stopped on lap 26. But the track began drying out. Hamilton was able to make the swap directly from his now worn intermediates to the dry tyre at the best moment, and he crossed the line 3 seconds clear of Robert Kubica in his championship winning year. 2018 German Grand Prix, I may have put this a bit higher, but we've got 14th to first. Heading into Hockenheim, Sebastian Vettel pretty much looked odds on to win this race. He enjoyed a slender 8-point lead over Hamilton going in, but a hydraulic issue for Hamilton made him essentially he was starting 14th. Not quite championship over, but it wasn't looking good for his title defence. However, he managed to carve his way through the field during the first half of the race, helped by a power unit on Daniel Ricciardo's Red Bull, while Bottas failure, I think, but Bottas played the team game as Mercedes tried to hang on to the lead Ferraris. The turning point, though, came with 20 laps to go. We had light rain and Vettel getting quite upset with Raikkonen, not really letting him pass. Again, Ferrari tactics, and he ended up sliding into the barriers, crashing. Hamilton stayed out on track on his fresh ultra soft tyres, which were extra grippy because of the light drizzle. He still had, he was still having quite a lot of grip. And when the safety car came out, Bottas was now behind Hamilton, but on newer tyres. It was a ferocious battle, which was eventually called off. Bottas may have won that. So, Bahrain Grand Prix, I may have put this one higher, but there's so many, isn't there? When you look at over 100 races. So, the first proper duel between Hamilton and Rosberg in the rivalry that would see their friends. I mean, having won in Australia, this was... as in Rosberg having won in Australia, this was an amazing back and forth race that Hamilton ultimately won. What was amazing about this, though, was the last part of the race. They'd kind of like swapped their strategies, and Rosberg was on the faster tyre as well. But he couldn't get by through Hamilton's tenacity and, at times, I think, almost borderline defence. Not quite Verstappen levels of defence, but it was really, really impressive. I mean, that one, definitely watch the highlights there. Turkish Grand Prix. So... this is the day where Hamilton matched Schumacher's record of 7 titles, but it took a special drive. He qualified only 6th, Bottas down in 9th, and the Mercedes, because it was low temperatures, low grip, kind of like one of the reasons why they don't seem to do well sometimes in Singapore. The Mercedes was really, really struggling, but the race slowly came to Hamilton. He pitted for Inter at the end of lap 8, showing good pace on the Inters. Further mistake on lap 16 while trying to pass Vettel moved him back down to 6th, but he didn't panic, and essentially the race came to him. He just was patient. This is the race where Lance Stroll, of all people, had pole position, and he'd end up going on to win by 30 seconds because the race came to him, and I think he definitely outdrove the car because that car did not deserve to win the race that year. Talking about cars not deserving to win the race, 4th to 1st at the Hungarian Grand Prix. This ended up being Hamilton's 10th victory, and it says here it was notable for a few reasons. It was the first time the British he'd won at the track. He'd won before, and it was the very first victory for hybrid technology. Yes, in 2009, McLaren was racing KERS, something that Red Bull and the Brawn Grand Prix did not do because they felt it was too heavy. But what was most astonishing, it says, was his win came after a run of terrible results, as both McLaren and Ferrari failed to nail those new regulations, partly because Brawn did such a good job, and partly because in 2008, that Ferrari and McLaren fight was so ferocious and in terms of development, and everyone believed it affected their 09 cars. Now, this is the season in which, as we said, Jenson Button won, but they brought a huge upgrade in Germany, and that transformed the car, much akin to McLaren's 2023 turnaround, qualifying 4th for the race, and he was just 2/10 off pole. He got past Vettel, a back and forth with Webber, and which essentially ended up going Hamilton's way as he utilised that KERS energy. So, I mean, another fine win, 4th. 2020 1st to 1st. This is one of Hamilton's best races that encapsulated his year of dominance, it said. He took pole by 0.3 of a second over his teammate. All gone to plan until 3 laps to go, and this is when Bottas suffered a tyre delamination. And on the last lap, I don't know if you know, it's almost worth watching. Halfway through that last lap, Hamilton's tyre went, and I think to this day, he's the only driver to win on 3 tyres. It was an absolute epic duel with Max Verstappen catching all the time. Number 3, they've got the 2012 United States Grand Prix, 2nd to 1st, which is not too bad, because this was an epic duel between Hamilton and Vettel, and I think Hamilton ended up taking advantage because Vettel led for a lot of the race. In the DRS zone when Vettel got caught up behind a back marker. That was brilliant. Now, I may have swapped these two around because we got the Brazilian Grand Prix. He did have that rocket engine, but he still had to start 10th. And before that, it was the sprint race to 1st. And it felt like the whole world was against him. Yes, he had epic passes, but, and there's the big but, he was going up against current world champion, Max Verstappen, who I think, let's be fair, was playing a bit dirty tactics down at, after the centre rest. He had the long straight, and yeah, it was basically he was quite happy to have a collision with Hamilton, but Hamilton avoided that. Should Verstappen have got a penalty? Yes, but Hamilton ended up passing him either the next lap or a couple of laps after that, and it was an epic duel between the two. To this day, Hamilton's best race. Absolutely easily. But they've got the best one here, the 2008 British Grand Prix. I think most of these are available on the F1 TV app. Yes, we don't get it live here in the UK, but what you can do, I think it's like $2.99 a month to watch the archive. That alone is worth it, even if it's for a month, to watch your favourite races in the off-season to get you excited. This is, in our eyes, Hamilton's most incredible performance in Formula One, and it came pretty early on too. In just his second season in F1, Hamilton responded in fine fashion to the home crowd support to put one of the classic wet weather performances that ranks right up there with the likes of Senna in Donington and Schumacher at Barcelona. He qualified fourth, but for the wet, but not for the wet but not soaking start, it says, and he hooked his getaway alongside Heikki Kovalainen, who I think was on pole. He vaulted past Webber and Kimi Räikkönen. Just seconds later, both Webber and Hamilton's title rival Massa were essentially facing the wrong way. I don't think Webber's title rival there. I think that's because there's no way Webber was winning the 2008 race. But anyway, on lap 5, Hamilton cleared Kovalainen with a simple pass at Stowe, and McLaren 1-2, and Raikkonen then moved past him. Raikkonen did at one point get quite close to him, but when the rain intensified, just before that, Ferrari decided not to change Raikkonen's tyres. They changed Hamilton's tyres. That was the big exclamation mark, and Hamilton basically drove away, and one of the biggest gaps to the field we've had. I mean, brilliant. I mean, there's your top 10. Just looking at Lewis's stats here. Where are they? Here we go. I mean, 7 championships, 103 wins over our 332 races, 197 podiums, 104 poles. We've got 65 fastest laps, one best finishes first. He's had 30 retirements. That's interesting, and 4,639.5 points. Albeit, I always think that's a moot point because people like Ayrton Senna, at some point, the win was 9 points. For Ayrton Senna. Wins from pole, 61. Hat-trick, 16. Grand Slam, 6. Home race wins. It's got to be one of the most with 8. P2 finishes. He's had 56 and 38 P3. Most podiums in the season, he's had 17. I mean, most poles in the season is 12. Everyone says, with that 104 now pole positions, thanks to Hungary last year, everyone says he's the best qualifier. I don't think that's true. I think he's very fast, but I do think he's one of the fastest over one lap, but I would even maybe give a Verstappen, a Vettel or Leclerc over that one lap, potentially the edge. However, I think, kind of like Alonso, I think Hamilton's is best in the races. He's so consistent. He knows how to look after the tyres, and I'd always choose a peak Lewis Hamilton over this generation, even over a peak Alonso and a peak Verstappen in the races. I think he can make the difference. Peak Hamilton is unbeatable in the races, especially where you can overtake. He's really good, and yeah. I mean, happy birthday to the guy. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the day. We just wanted to say a big happy birthday to the Lewis of the Hamilton. If you have made it to the end, that's great. If you want to like and subscribe, that is great too. Please do, and we will speak to you next time on the Hot Lap. Thank you very much.